Terror in the Attic. 4 short horror stories. Written by Michael van der Voort. Narrated by Robin Reeds. Seeing Lucifer's Smile. I can honestly say that, to start with, it was more from disbelief than concern that I decided to go looking for Joe. Luckily, unlike a lot of the other morons I've had to go looking for over the years, searching him out wasn't exactly difficult. Blessed with all the silent stealth of a fireworks display, Joe was never going to be very good at hiding. With characteristic predictability, he was in the first place I looked, even if he was reluctant to open the door. "Let me in, Joe," I called in a voice that was half my own and half the commanding, "I'm coming in" police voice that we had both used on the many dawn raids we had worked together over the years. I held back on going full police voice so as not to alert the neighbours or make it sound like I was going to kick his front door in. In fact, I was already feeling bad about the way I had rapped heavily on his door, a force of habit from 20 years of calling on people who were, shall I say, reluctant to open up, and which had already been harder and louder than one should really knock when calling on a friend. Arriving at the police precinct earlier that morning, I was surprised to find Joe not already at his desk, stabbing at the keyboard like a demented dinosaur and doing that patented two-finger typing he did. I asked the chief where Joe was hiding. The chief, the new chief, that is, the guy the district put in charge last month and who couldn't tell me or Joe from Adam, told me that Joe had called in early and was taking a sick day. At first I thought he was extracting the urine, but the straight-lipped stare of blank confusion he met me with convinced me that he had no idea why I found that suggestion so funny. "Joe, a sick day?" I asked, with understandable skepticism. The chief nodded, a look of bewildered puzzlement and a half-vacant smile flitting across his face. "Yeah, he phoned in earlier. He sounded bloody awful on the phone. Apparently he's got flu or some kind of lurgy. It's been going around, you know. My mother-in-law—" I interrupted. "Joe's off with the flu? Joe? The same Joe who was thrown down a flight of stairs, broke his pelvis and was at work the next day? Joe who was shot in the shoulder and came back to the precinct, still bleeding, to file the paperwork on the idiot who shot him? That Joe?" The chief, the new chief, nodded blankly. "Course he is," I said, smiling and nodding sarcastically. Then, throwing on my coat and picking up a folder of casework, I headed straight for Joe's apartment. "Come on, mate, I know you're in there. I can hear you breathing. You sound like Darth Vader having an asthma attack. Open up." I waited for a minute, during which Joe clearly realized I wasn't going away, before a soft, laboured shuffling broke out on the other side of the door, and I knew that Joe was slowly but steadily making his way toward me, moving in his usual ambling, bear-like waddle over to the door. I half expected that when he finally opened the door I'd find him ready to jump out at me with a water pistol or some other way to surprise me, this supposed sick day being the somewhat implausible setup to an elaborate prank. When he finally did swing back the heavy door, however, it became obvious that it wasn't. Whilst he may have sounded bloody awful on the phone, that description in no way prepared me for what met me at the door. Joe, usually impeccably neat and clean-shaven, looked like he hadn't eaten, slept, or shaved in days. In the 4 days since I'd seen him last, we had been off over the bank holiday and had finally taken some well-earned annual leave, he seemed to have aged 5 years. He was standing there, sallow and dirty looking in his boxer shorts, a stained white vest straining to cover his massive beer belly, the blanket he had thrown over his shoulders stretching almost to the ground as he hugged it tightly to himself. "Bloody hell, mate, what happened to you? No offence, but you look— Are you all right?" I asked, now with genuine concern. Joe didn't answer. Instead, he simply turned, leaving me to close the door behind us, and shuffled over to the sofa, plonking his massive frame down on it, and slouching in a way that made it look as if someone had just dumped a second sofa on top of the first. "When the new lad told me you were off sick, I thought he was joking. 20 years we've been partners, and I've never known you take a day off that wasn't owed to you. Never. Especially not because you'd come down with a bout of man flu."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?